A big shout out to our wonderful channel members. Hello and welcome to ARKS Lounge. I'm Caffey. Most people would probably know me under a very different sounding voice. I started with the franchise in PSO2 around 2013. I remember wanting to play the game sooner and waiting for the English release. And then episode 2 happened on JP. And I thought to myself, well, maybe waiting is pointless.
Yeah. I get that.
So here I am. It's fucking 12 years later. How about you, Sky?
So I am a little bit older in the franchise.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So I started in 2003 with GameCube PSO, and I've basically followed the franchise through since. So, you know, I've basically played the majority of the franchise now. Like GameCube PSO, Blueburst, PSU, PSO2 on the Japanese servers, most of the portable games. So I played quite a few of them now. It's always been a franchise that I've really, really loved, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future as well. So I'm really excited to start this podcast as well, because it's something I've always wanted to do, and to get a chance to discuss the franchise with someone else who's also as passionate about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, we saw there's like a market hole. We only realized today that apparently Keroppi used to have a podcast that he abandoned.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Apparently people were asking him to revitalize it, but then we kind of threw in a wrench into those plans, so oops.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, hopefully we can provide a adequate podcast.
Hopefully, we'll try.
Yeah, though the first episode will be a little bit awkward because we're not used to this format at all.
Yeah, just for disclosure, neither of us have ever done a podcast before, so this is entirely new to both of us.
And I rarely record my voice, so it'll be very interesting. Just how it's interesting that we immediately forgot to talk about the artist who designed the logo of this podcast. Their name is Keziah Kyung. You probably saw some of their memes over on Twitter. They're a very good artist, and they also designed the logo that I use for my channel. So make sure to check them out. What have we been up to recently?
So me myself, I think when I've been on NGS, so I tend to play a few times a week normally. My main goal in NGS at the minute, I think, is still farming acro materials, because I have way too many characters and it is taking far too long to get them all to acro.
Yeah, I've had the same issue recently. I thought to myself, well, getting acro materials for one weapon is like child's play.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to play the game more, so I'm gonna start gearing my old characters.
Okay.
And now I'm looking at my progress grinder stash, wondering where it all went wrong.
Yeah, I feel it on a personal level. I think I have 6 characters, and I think I have about 2 of them equipped. I'm always out of progress grinders, so I know that pain.
The seasonal event is not helping either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I am
I've already cleaned the ship out.
Yeah, I haven't yet, but I am trying to get a little bit more out of the treasure shop. As a premium player, I get to refresh it a little bit more, but it always gives me the materials I don't want.
Yeah, I keep getting the Ectovans constantly.
Yeah.
Where I just want progress grinders. I don't care about the rest. I just want progress grinders, but the game will not give me them.
Yeah, they made them stupidly rare for some reason.
Yeah. What about yourself anyway? Have you been up to anything else apart from trying to gear your alts?
I also worked a little bit of my creative space.
Oh, cool.
It's still unfinished. I've been trying to make it a little bit more castle themed, because I'm super creative like that. Even in Minecraft, I always just build castles and nothing else.
Yeah, my creative space is not great at the minute. Basically, in mine, I've got a hidden base underground, which is really cool, but then there's nothing above ground, so it looks like an empty creative space. Which I didn't think about.
Well, it is hidden. Nobody will check if there's
It is.
nothing, if it doesn't look like there's anything.
Yeah,
So in that regard, it fulfills its purpose.
it's working too well.
Yeah. Have you tried Braver recently? With the expansion?
I have just changed one of my characters to Braver. I'll be honest, I don't really tend to play Braver very much. It's not one of my favourite classes. I played it a little bit, maybe near the game's launch. It wasn't very far into NGS's life at all, and just didn't really vibe with it very much. So I tended to go for other classes instead. But I'm trying to level a new alt. She's one of the 6, it's not another one. So I'm trying to level a new alt, and I'm going to try Braver on that character. I'm interested to see what the changes are like for it, because I understand they're quite significant changes.
I myself, I have a little bit of a history with Braver, because I
Okay.
played it on PSO2 back during episode 2, because back then it was like objectively better to play Braver over Hunter.
Yeah, I remember those days of Japanese EP2, where everyone was just spamming katana.
Yeah, it's just Shunka spam all over.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember how Braver was like, the way the skills were designed, you got a feeling that the devs wanted it to be a hybrid from day one, even like in base
Yeah.
PSO2, but they kept fucking it up. Like, for example, the Braver mag, like that's an amazing skill, but
Yeah,
back then it only gave you 50% of your dex as melee attack and ranged attack. So if you were planning on playing optimally, then you would just use one or the other instead
I
of
think
both.
when I played it, yeah, I think when I played on Japanese PSO2, I think I only played Katana Braver. It didn't feel like it was really that viable to play both.
Yeah, and another issue was the skill points.
Yeah,
Sometimes I get a feeling like the PSO2 skill trees were designed around the level 200 cap, but somewhere along the line they realized they won't do level 200, so they started giving skill points through client orders and didn't fix the skill trees until episode 5. Rather infamously.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what they were planning really. The way that the skill tree was, it just didn't really work for Braver when it got added. It was just really difficult to actually build it to use both weapons, and it did kind of feel like you were pushed into one weapon rather than the other.
Yeah.
I think in NGS, from what I understand anyway, maybe it's a bit easier to use both, but again, I haven't really used Braver a whole lot in NGS.
It wasn't easier on launch because,
Okay.
ironically, on launch it was exactly the same issue. Like, why would I use the dual augment that gives me melee and ranged when the potency I get from it is less than if I specialized in one or the other?
Yeah.
And the skill that allowed them to use one or the other for both weapons, I think it didn't came out until Quaris or Stia, somewhere along those lines. So that skill took a long time to come out. And then they had barely any synergy until recently with the Braver expansion. So a lot of people got used to playing either bow or katana. There were very few instances where you would use both weapons. Like, I know for some ARKS record, it was better to use both weapons.
Okay.
But now with the Braver expansion, they introduced this new skill that after finishing Brave Combat, it buffs both weapons, regardless of which weapon you use to use the combat finisher. So
that helps quite a bit then.
yeah, so even if you play like pure katana and you get to a section of the fight where you have to do like sandbag DPS, which is just attacking a target that doesn't move, then using the bow would be very beneficial in that scenario. And vice versa, if you're using just bow and you use your combat finisher, then you have katana buffed for like 4 PAs. So there's that.
I think that sounds like a step in the right direction at least.
Yeah. They also improved each weapon's like strengths. So for example, katana is like way better at countering now. And bow also got like a buff to its counter, but it's not that substantial. Meanwhile, bow got like a lot of potency improvements and way less friction between the kit when it comes to bow attack impact.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because that skill got introduced at the beginning of version 2, and it's kind of funny looking back because it basically like redefined the entirety of bow gameplay. For those who don't know, bow attack impact is basically like after a set number of PAs, you get an enhanced normal attack, and using that enhanced normal attack applies a 25% buff to your PAs, which is rather huge. And the new buff you get after katana, not katana, after brave combat finish, also increases the bow impact accumulation. So you have this not endless, but like semi-endless loop where you can use impact, use a buffed PA, it immediately recharges impact, so you can use that again and use a buffed PA. And 25% is nothing to sneeze at. That makes bow really powerful, even in solo situations.
Yeah, that's a huge buff, really.
Yeah, and if you're in a party situation, then bow is just clapping cheeks.
It's about time. Bow was too hard done by for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, because like if you look at the potency increases by themselves, they don't look very impressive. Like, oh, 4% here, 3% there. On bow, I thought bow needs help. But then when you like multiplied it with the bow impact thingy,
yeah,
like that quickly adds up. I know some people didn't like the expansion because they kind of wished they would go into a direction where each weapon can be played by itself effectively, and this is just further pushing Braver into being a hybrid.
Yeah.
But like I said, I always got the impression that Braver was meant to be a hybrid. They just were not very good at making it a hybrid.
Well, I think Braver, even going back to base PSO2, I think, am I right in thinking that Braver was the first so-called hybrid class?
Yeah.
So it was always kind of an experimental thing anyway. Mm-hmm. And I think as they've gone through NGS, I think they have improved it and they've made it more viable as a hybrid class, which I think is how it should be anyway.
Yeah. Though, at the same time, you have Bouncer, which is a hybrid class, but I'm not exactly sure how you're supposed to play that hybrid.
My way to play Bouncer is to just use Soaring Blades and forget that jet boots exist.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, boots need more love.
Yeah, I really liked Bouncer in base. I didn't play it optimally by a long shot, but I really enjoyed the gameplay of pressing weapon action after Photon Art to cause a supportive buff. Like that's really cool. And then using Jet Sweep, not Jet Sweep, what was it called in Global? The big kick that you charge up.
I can't remember what it's called now. I know which one you mean, yeah, the charge up one.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name though.
but yeah, I really liked that gameplay loop. It was a little bit like simple because now that I think about it, jet boots didn't have more than 4 PAs, which which will be relevant to a community question later.
Yeah, I wonder which one that is.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny. I did like that gameplay loop. I do not know what exactly the design intention was with New Genesis boots.
It's a very weird weapon in NGS, I think. I just don't think it really works. And the only time people seem to use it is it for the weapon action, where you kind of, I think you hold the weapon action and you do that attack where you sort of go backwards and forwards faster and faster?
That's the normal attack.
Oh, normal attack is it, yeah. That shows how long I haven't played jet boots for.
Yeah. The weapon action, I think it's like just a step counter alternative.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I basically just use sword and blades and just... I can't remember the last time I used jet boots.
yeah, and like the main gimmick of boots is that depending on if you hold or tap the PA button, you have different PAs, or
Yeah.
like different PA effects. Yeah, but I feel like boots are very clunky to use, for me at least, last time I used them. It's like, I want to do normal attacks, and I'm used to just holding the normal attack button, because there are no just attacks anymore, so on Tectra I'm just holding the normal attack button.
I still just attack because I'm so used to PSO.
And then on jet boots, if I hold the normal attack button, then I just keep using the super wind-up attack, which
Yeah.
I don't want to always use. And then sometimes if I just press the button, maybe the inputs gets eaten or something. I don't know. It's weird. I don't like New Genesis boots at all.
Yeah, same here.
I also don't like how when I charge techniques in boots, I move forward. I don't know why they added that. It's so weird.
I guess maybe the reasoning is that so you can move forward to get into melee range, but it doesn't feel right. It feels very, very clunky.
Yeah, like why? Like if I wanted to move into melee range, I would just move my movement stick, you know?
Yeah.
Forcing me to move forward is just so weird, man. I'm also not used to it at all from Tector and Force.
Yeah.
Where I can just hold down the button and I have full control of my character.
It does feel like it's taking away control of your character because you're moving forward without wanting to. I genuinely don't know why they added that.
But I could give Bouncer a new another shot because I feel like TechArts customizations fix a lot of issues I have with the classes, or I had with them on launch.
Yeah, same here.
I went over the Braver TechArts customizations when I was playing it on my alt, and it's really interesting to start experimenting with them, especially if you're not used to playing that class, because it feels like so much to consider at once. You kind of get overwhelmed. When they were coming out one at a time, it was a little bit more digestible. So I didn't really consider that when I was playing Tector or Force.
Yeah.
But now that I'm playing a different class and it all comes all at once, I'm like, damn, this is a pretty fun system to play around with.
I think some of the PA customizations are really interesting. I think there is some that do feel a little bit undeveloped is probably the best way I'd put it, where it just kind of feels like, hey, it's a damage boost for more PP. But then there's other ones that actually do change the PA quite a bit, which I do like. I wish they would do more of that.
Yeah, like with Braver, there's for bow and katana, there's one PA that you can customize so that during Brave combat they're enhanced, which is really cool. Because now you have a reason to actually stay in Brave combat for a little bit, instead of just activating it and doing finisher immediately. For Katana, it's also like interesting how the filler customization is boosting the first and second step of the PA combo. Because normally you only really care about the third step, but now you can buff a filler PA with the customization that affects the first and second step, and you could use that twice, and then for the finisher you use the preferred PA or something.
Okay.
So there is, you can cook with it, which is nice.
It gives you some more options, doesn't it, about how to play the class, which I think is what I want from NGS. I like to have different kind of styles that I can go with for a class. I don't want to feel locked into a specific playstyle, and I think the PA customization does give you a way of doing that.
Yeah, I also feel like if they ever considered dropping the main class weapon bonus, or at least buffing subclass weapon damage, then PA customization could really shine.
Yeah.
Because I really like the idea of using subclass weapons, but because of the main class weapon bonus, I always feel like it's a waste to spend my time with it. Because like if it wasn't a waste, then I could just use, for example, Soaring Blade, the PA that spins you like a Beyblade. It has it has a customization that increases Pinion Blade accumulation by 50%, and no Braver main will ever use this. But on a subclass, this is actually really good, because now it takes like 2 PAs to charge up Pinion Blade, so you can just do that really quickly, have Pinion Blade sit on your hotbar until a break happens, and then whip it out when you need it, which I feel like the subclass system would be way more interesting if more of that was possible.
It feels a little bit restricted, I think, at the minute. I think a lot of the skills, with them being main class only as well, I appreciate why they've done it, because they don't want to take away the main skills that kind of identify the classes. So, things like, Shifter and Demand or Wand Lovers, taking that away from Tector would be stupid, I think, because there'd be less reason to play Tector then. Whereas I think that they need to look at some of the skills that are main class only, the ones that maybe aren't as class defining, and maybe make them open to being used by subclasses as well.
Yeah, I also don't really understand why they just don't go the Slayer route, where some skills just have reduced potency on subclasses. I feel like that would be way better than just outright making it main class only.
Yeah, so you can still do it if you want to, but you just need to be aware that it won't be as effective using it as a sub, which I think is a totally fine way of doing it.
Yeah.
So hopefully they do it in the future.
I wish they would do it. The main class weapon bonus was introduced at launch as like a knee-jerk reaction to the beta, where everybody was just running around as Tector Hunter with a sword. And I feel like nowadays we have enough skills and enough like multipliers and whatever to like where that wouldn't be so much of an issue.
Yeah.
Like you could probably introduce a skill that Hunter can't live without if it was a subclass, but subclass weapons could live without, and I would think that would be a way better thing of doing it than just making all subclass weapons by default 10% weaker.
It just kind of feels at the minute like there isn't really a good reason to use a subclass weapon. There might be the odd niche situations, but I mean, typically for my classes, I don't tend to use my subclass weapons.
Yeah. And I feel like if they did it where you can use your subclass weapons, then naturally the multi-weapon system is way more interesting by default.
Yeah.
And this would also give you a higher access to photon arts, which would fix a complaint certain players have about the game.
Yeah. It would just give you more freedom in the game, which I think is what a lot of people want.
Yeah. I feel like New Genesis in general feels a little bit too over-engineered. Because PSO2, like, it had a lot of issues where we had the Blight rounds with 300% potency, and then later 255% potency for way too long. But at least it felt like it was designed around having fun, rather than optimal damage rotations.
Yeah.
And then New Gen... Yeah?
I think I've always thought with New Genesis that I like the direction they went in for the most part, but I do feel like some things they've done in NGS seems like they've done it to simplify systems from PSO2, which I appreciate, because some things in PSO2 I think were far too overcomplicated. But I do think that there are some things they've gone a little bit too far and maybe simplified too much.
Yeah. For me, it's like, okay, so in PSO2 they like had all these quote-unquote problems where some skills were either useless or too overpowered or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least it was like fun to experiment around in.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, this fun often led to people one-shotting Magatsu, but it felt more gamey in that way. like Xenoblade is a popular franchise right now, and if you go into the rabbit hole of min-maxing, then yeah, you can one-shot everything in the game, basically, and that can be fun to certain type of players. And New Genesis feels like they want to design the game around optimal play, and that includes making sure that nothing can be too powerful and nothing can be too weak, which isn't bad by default, but it is a little bit boring.
It can be. I think more evidence of that as well is if you take the recent campaign that they've done where they're giving out the Tricelio and the Tristasis gear in the treasure shop. That is obviously to try and bring people's gear up in preparation for later content, but it does also mean that you're kind of putting everyone then on a level playing field, and it just feels like you're, again, not wanting to make things too hard or too easy.
Yeah, and another thing is also like with weapons. Well, we used to have way more weapons in PSO2, and some of them had effects that were like, oh, uncharged techniques are now super broken. We don't have that anymore, and I wish they made more potentials that are a little bit more interesting. I feel like the 12-star weapons were doing a pretty good job, because like Acrocelio is like super strong on photon blasts, and then 12 is really helpful on downs, so both of them have different niches. I actually started using both weapons recently, and swapping weapons based on what you want to use at the moment kind of reminds me of PSO when you swapped weapons depending on if you needed an AoE attack or single target attack or whatever. So in that regard, it brings a little bit more flavor into the game. I just wish there was more of it.
Yeah, I think the 12 stars are definitely a step in the right direction, and I think the Legendios weapons as well, I think that could be an interesting system if they keep us up with the Legend weapons. I am interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, same. People started to like record gameplay with the Legendios weapons, so it was interesting to see how they that potential actually makes them play differently a little bit. Because now you have to think about all the situations where you can just sheath your weapon and then start out with like a nuke of extra damage. So that's nice. I really hope we get more of that.
It would be nice. Just things that would change the game up a bit more and just have some more interesting potentials. I think the things like the Acrocelio and the 12 that you mentioned, I think that is a good start. But I think we just need to build on that.
Yeah, but I also feel like the problem with weapons being a little bit too boring comes from the multi-weapon system. Like everything has to be compatible with everything.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately doesn't allow much room for creativity. Like buffing uncharged techniques, what's gonna mean to a Braver, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be nice to make it a little bit more subclassable, but
yeah, hopefully in the future.
What did you think about the story update we got recently with Vile?
I actually really liked it. I know that people like to rag on NGS's story, but lack of, as they'll say. I felt that the Vile update was actually a really positive step, honestly. I think that the implications of it are quite interesting. I'm not going to go into too much in case people don't want spoilers, but I mean, it's been out for a while now. You've had time.
Yeah, I think it's fine to talk about spoilers. And I can throw a disclaimer on the screen so people can mute the video. So I myself, I was really hyped when the ending cutscene came. Because we all knew that Nameless City was probably an ARKS ship, but
yeah,
that was just a conjecture at that point, like a year ago.
You had what looked like Clarissa in the background, so I mean, when I saw that, I was like, okay, I see what we're doing here.
Yeah, and it was also fun, like in retrospect, coming to Twitter and people going like, wait a minute, I don't have this dialogue option because I didn't play PSO2. So that
I
was...
didn't have that either, unfortunately, because obviously I played PSO2 on the Japanese server, so I never did the story on global.
Yeah, I did the story on global and on JP, and I thought that everybody would get this director option. I would be like, wait a minute, a third option or a fourth option? I don't remember. That's new. So I clicked on it, and then it gave me the flashback, and I'm like, huh, interesting.
I mean, I think we all knew that there was going to be some link to PSO2. I think we all knew it was coming. But I am interested to see where they go with it from here. Because obviously, even after you beat Vile, you don't really get a whole lot. You basically get a glimpse of the ARK ship in the distance that's trying to signal you. And that's about it. You don't really get much more than that.
Yeah, and there's also the big elephant in the room, or rather, the missing elephant in the room, that you can't see Halfa at all.
Yeah.
Which...
So where are you?
Yeah, so where is Halfa? Like, I think it's probably a cloaked planet, which would make the most sense to me. Because, like, it was meant to be like a protected environment where nothing interferes with it. So hiding the planet was probably the best solution. And in my mind, it also makes sense because Zephetto could probably be thinking, oh, I'm gonna hide the planet, so the Starless will have a harder time finding it. But Vile probably was like, yeah, cloak the planet, we're totally not gonna find it. Except they can just sense photons and find it anyway.
Yeah. I think, obviously, earlier in the story, it is kind of spelled out that, Halfa is there as kind of a test bed for ARKS, to basically train ARKS. So it would not surprise me if it was cloaked. I mean, you can see even when the game launched, if you looked at Halfa, you could see all of the sort of artificial parts of it. You knew that there was something up with the planet even from the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, that's something I think New Genesis does really well. It has a lot of environmental storytelling. So you can always surmise things just from looking around. Like, like South Elio has a lot of waterfalls, but all of them come from water generators. And even the lakes in Elio come from water pumps. So where is all that water being pumped out from? Like, that's not something you find on a regular planet. And I think the tasks, the NPCs that gave tasks also gave you a little bit lore, which I feel like 99% of players haven't read.
Yeah, no one does those.
Yeah. And it's also implied that, like, Halfa's skybox is fake, which is also interesting. Because if the planet is cloaked, then you could assume that the same device that cloaks the planet also generates a fake skybox. And we know ARKS have that technology because the skybox in Nameless City is also artificial. So, yeah.
We also know, obviously, in NGS, there is no way of immediately leaving Halfa. So if there's a fake skybox as well, is that because they didn't want people to know what was outside of Halfa?
Yeah. I think they mentioned at one point that the dolls keep shutting down their attempts of leaving, which also means that they've tried to leave before, but they just can't.
Yeah. Which is why we haven't left the planet yet.
Yeah, and why we probably won't leave the planet for a while, if ever. Oh yeah, another thing that stuck out to me, like in retrospect, I forgot to mention it the last time I did a story video, is that when Aegis does his final attack, his desperation attack, you can see like some weird portal where light shines through it.
Okay.
And I guess it's him absorbing photons to do the final attack, so naturally the question is like, where do these photons come from? And in retrospect, it's kind of funny because they look exactly the same as the Clarissa light. So, yeah. I also find it interesting that Vile decided to attack the ARKS ship instead of Halfa, which to me signifies that he probably tried to destroy the ARKS ship because it's our only means of escape, like realistically. And for starters, half has a ARKS pass dispenser, so naturally he would probably want to keep it intact.
Yeah, basically just wants to keep all the ARKS on Halfa, so they're all in one place.
Yeah. And just pick them out like grapes to eat. Though it doesn't exactly work, because turns out that the Guardian was woken up, which neither Vile nor Zepheto knew was happening.
Yeah.
Which I think right now is the big question, like, who did it? And do they know more about the story than we do? Because, if I'm not mistaken, they stole their pod with the Guardian, like, back during the Civil War period, which I think was like 300 years ago.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah. And then the Guardian didn't reappear until recently, like, relatively recently. So, whoever did it is probably still around. Unless they, like, shot the pod somewhere and, I don't know, made it a scheduled Twitter post or something.
Yeah, I will appear in another 200 years or whatever.
Yeah, somewhere around then. I also don't think that Val is dead. Because, like, we spent the entire chapter establishing that because of Vile, Zepheto has this body hopping ability.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if this was exactly the explanation for why Vile is still important in the story and why we have the malignant Vile suppression.
I mean, if Vile has that ability, then couldn't it just hop to another body?
Yeah. Like, we never saw this fourth clone that he hopped into. So maybe he's chilling out there somewhere waiting to be reactivated. Maybe it's
also, taking a new body is a very Dark Falls thing to do.
Yeah, especially PSO2 Dark Falls.
Yeah.
Like, Apprentice had like 4 different hosts. I know people want more story. Some people want New Genesis to have as much story as Final Fantasy XIV, which I don't think will ever happen, because the devs went on record saying they don't want to do too much story because it's mandatory now.
It's also just probably a much smaller team as well, so...
Not only that, but the story is also, like, outsourced.
Yeah.
It's outsourced to Gecko Inc., which is a Japanese writing firm. If you played Mario and Luigi Brothership, they also wrote that.
It's an interesting comparison.
Yeah. Well, the final portion of that game is very dark. But yeah, they also work on PSO2 ES Season 3. So
okay, fair enough.
So New Genesis isn't their first rodeo. But I think it's... Whatever they planned for New Genesis story, they obviously threw it into the trash around Chapter 5. Yeah. And I think one of the interviews also has the... I think it was Kimura or Hiro saying how everything up until Chapter 4 was like set in stone from the beginning.
Okay.
And only Chapter 5 was where they started to rewrite the story to accommodate feedback. And you can really tell, because Chapter 5 is when the story really became interesting.
Yeah, I think that the early chapters of NGS's story are not great. It just kind of doesn't go anywhere for a long time.
Yeah.
I think the last couple of chapters we've had are, in my opinion at least, are much better. I know the story does get a lot of flack, but for me at least, I think particularly the last chapter that we had, I think that was a big step forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I end up replaying the story a lot because of my videos. Like, the recent melody that I did made me replay the entire story just to record all those scenes, because I hadn't had them recorded before.
Okay.
And I notice with Retem, for example, that it feels like there's just a few scenes missing half the time. Like, you have the scene where Naderer finds out that her music isn't strengthening ARKS, it's weakening the dolls.
Yeah,
and naturally you would feel like this scene gets followed up by her, like, talking to other people about it. But no, we go directly into the assault mission, where we go to Roof McQuad.
Yeah, I never know how to pronounce that place.
Yeah, and
McQuad, that'll do.
And nobody knows that she figured out how her song works until she starts singing in the middle of the battlefield, which it feels a little bit rushed. And
it's a bit weird because we obviously, the dolls start attacking, we try and hold them off, and we just assume that we're going to be okay with Najera, and then she starts singing. It's like, oh, it turns out everyth's fine.
Yeah.
It does feel like there is a bit missing.
Like we know it'll work because we just saw her do it, but everyone else is like, what is she doing? Huh?
Why is she here?
So
I wonder if that was cut content then. I wonder if they did have more planned for that and just cut it.
I don't think they had more planned because they were surprised with how much people demanded more story content. But then again, the last year feels like very barren in terms of story content.
Yeah. I think what we've had from story in the past year has been good. But my big problem with the story at the minute is that there is just far too long a gap between each chapter. To the point where when the next one comes out, I will probably have to replay the previous one to remember what happened.
Yeah, the pacing is not very good. And I think that's the biggest problem with the New Genesis story right now.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
When I was playing the story for my new player guide, like a year ago, I played through everything in one go, and it felt really good. But having to wait for each chapter for 6 months or longer, it doesn't feel good at all.
It's far too long a wait. I know they're wanting to focus on other things and get other elements of the game right, which is fine. But I don't think you can just completely disregard the story for 6+ months.
Yeah, and I feel like they could easily fix this by just having like unvoiced scenes. Like maybe give the class tutors tasks that are just about their character or something.
Yeah.
Like that would work, but instead all the tasks are just tutorial based in nature, which it feels like a missed opportunity, really.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people liked Risa in PSO2 way before she became important in the story. And you just don't have that with NGS NPCs, I feel like. Like, if the NPC isn't important for the story, it's likely they won't be super interesting at all.
Yeah. Or they just won't show up at all in the story.
Yeah. Like, I remember I was like, oh, they made all these NPCs appear in the Aegis debriefing cutscene. But it's like, if I didn't watch or read the central comic, they would probably be just random NPCs to me.
Yeah.
Which is it's a very missed opportunity in my opinion.
I feel that if you're relying on people to watch, to read the comic, to know who people are, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
I still think you should go and read the comic because the comic is actually good, but you shouldn't have to rely on reading that to know who people are in the story.
Yeah. And I also found it's because like in PSO2 when you play like an urgent quest that has, or like seasonal urgent quest, or like the free field exploration, you bump into NPCs that actually show up in the story, and it's easier to like be like, oh, it's this guy or girl, whatever. And in New Genesis, I remember when it first launched and the trials started to happen with NPCs, I was like, who's Pop Peck?
Yeah. Who are you? I've never seen you in my life.
Yeah. And they actually do stand somewhere in the lobby, but like they don't have a task or anything. And it's like, I don't know.
They're just kind of there.
It's just not super great. And I feel like the NPCs is such an easy way to improve things. Even for like collab scratches or whatever. You could have like all the collab characters like show up in the lobby and give you a task or something, and then
That's how it was in PSO 2, wasn't it? For some
Yeah.
collabs at least.
and then instead of having daily login bonuses giving you all these rewards, just put them in the task rewards from these
Yeah.
characters. Like I think that would be way better to like make collab content without much, I don't know, development costs.
Yeah, I mean, no one's saying that we need to have, a huge investment in every single collab that we get.
Yeah,
But
like,
it would just be nice to have, even if it's just a few tasks linked to the collab.
yeah, because I understand why they're not doing like the Eva collab, because like it sucks to do all this effort into a quest, and then
Yeah.
after the collab is over, the quest is permanently deleted. Like,
Yeah.
that sucks. It's very FOMO-inducing, in my opinion. But I feel like the tasks would be such an easy way to like make collabs a little bit more interesting,
Oh, definitely, yeah.
and also make story a little bit more interesting. 'Cause,
I think if they can fix the issues with story, I think it will solve a lot of people's issues with at least one part of NGS, because that is a really common complaint that I hear from people about NGS.
yeah, and that's one part where I fully agree. Like the story,
Yeah.
it's not bad, but if PSO2 did story for quantity over quality, which episode 1 to 3 was really rough to play back in the day, NGS is the exact opposite spectrum, where they go quality over quantity to a very self-destructive degree.
Yeah, I think particularly at the last one, there was obviously a lot of work gone into that last story quest.
Yeah,
But then it kind of feels like it's almost for nothing, because then we're not getting anything for 6 months plus.
yeah. They obviously don't want to do too much story, but at the same time, like, if you don't want to make too much mandatory story, why not make more optional story?
Yeah.
I feel like that would be the perfect middle ground.
And then people who want to engage with it can, and people who aren't interested in the story can just skip it.
Yeah. I don't know. This is something I wish I could ask the developers directly.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because of the developers like hiding behind Hero and Yui, we won't ever get a direct answer.
All you need to do is just submit your question,
Yeah, and hope
they
that
might
it gets
take
picked. Hope that it gets picked up.
Alternatively, you could submit your questions to hashtag ARKS Lounge.
Yeah, and we can speculate about the answer.
Yeah.
Keroppi Burned Out. That's breaking news right now.
It is.
Everybody who hasn't played in 3 years is freaking out. Yeah, I think I'm honestly surprised he didn't burn out sooner. Because
Yeah, same.
he's very dedicated, which is very commendable. But during daily uploads, like even with any other game or topic, it will burn you out eventually.
It's really difficult. I mean, even for me, people who've seen my channel will know that I typically do an NGS video once every couple of weeks. And even with that, sometimes I will struggle to think of a good idea that I'm happy with. So I cannot imagine trying to do a video every single day.
Yeah, me neither.
All credit to him for doing it for this long.
Yeah. But yeah, burning out is completely normal. I personally get burnout from any video game that I play too much. Like recently, Xenoblade X came out on Switch, and I played that for 110 hours in like 2 weeks. And I finished everything except all the achievements. And even I needed to like step away from the game for a little bit before I continue with the achievements.
It's just a natural thing, isn't it? If you are starting to burn out on a game, regardless of if it's NGS or another game you're playing, it's just natural to take, if you're getting burned out, take a step back and, remove yourself from it for a bit. There's no harm in taking a step back. Even just play another game if you want to, or do something else, take up another hobby or something. It's fine to do that for a bit.
Yeah.
And the game will still be here when you get back.
Yeah, games are supposed to be fun, and
Yeah.
playing the same game or the same toy or whatever over and over. Like eventually it'll get boring. So yeah, that's just natural thing. I don't know why some people, not everyone, some people are acting like, oh, Keroppi has fallen. Now everything else will fall as well. Like that's a bit silly to me.
And I know he's probably the biggest. I'm pretty sure he's one of the, if not the biggest creator in the global side anywhere. So I can understand some people being a bit worried if he's starting to burn out. But
yeah,
it's honestly, I would just say to those people, it's a natural thing. If you play the game for a long time, occasionally you need to take breaks.
And also, I can't imagine the pressure he must feel if he can't even take a break without people starting to use that as a call to action, like, oh my god, the game is finally dying. I told you EOS is coming.
Like, EOS has been coming since the game launched, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it takes time away. I mean, realistically, I think I mentioned this before, but with the way the NGS creator program works, if you're at the top level, the rainbow level, you have, is it about a year or so before you drop off the program?
Yeah, a year. Because it takes 3 months to drop 1 rank, and there's 4 ranks. So, yeah, you can basically dip for a year, and you'll likely be golden. So. And
realistically, with the amount of content he's done for NGS, I would imagine that even if he did pull away from the game for a while, I think he would still meet the view requirements anyway.
Yeah.
Just from the content he's already got out.
Like, I haven't done as much content as him, and even I get completely carried by my backlog.
I get carried by one particular video. I think that's the only thing keeping me in the program at the minute. But yeah, if you're getting burnt out on a game, just take a break. It's totally fine to do that.
Yeah, I've taken break with the game, especially during PSO2, way more often, because I'm nowadays I'm like able to scratch to like fund my gameplay, so I don't farm Dex too much. But if I were playing free to play, I would probably be farming Dex for more, and I would probably be burning out more. But the same thing happened in PSO2, where I was just doing tacos on 10 characters, and I was questioning my life choices.
Yeah, I also remember running that like every single time they got renewed. It's like, well, time to do the time attacks again.
Yeah, my favorite piece of content.
It became like a job, honestly.
Yeah, and you couldn't even ignore it because it was like so lucrative.
Yeah, it was like by far the best money in the game.
Yeah, because like PS2 augments were very convoluted.
Yeah, extremely.
Yeah, so for most people, the best way to make money was to just do tacos, and to do more tacos, you had to make more alt characters, which,
I think the only other where I remember people making money was there was an order that would come up now and again. I think it was to do, is it Valrodos, the worm boss?
Yeah.
Occasionally an order would come up for that, which I think was for about 250,000 Mazetta.
Yeah.
But yeah, if that wasn't up, it was basically just do time attacks again.
Yeah, headline happened.
It did.
It sure did happen. May looks very light on content, which is fine. I guess it's not fine because it's the 4th year anniversary of NGS, and it feels like nothing exciting is happening. But I don't know. I think it's fine.
I mean, for me, I think the festival that's on at the moment, I think, is a really good time to stock up on things. That is keeping me busy enough. For me personally, I've got other games to play as well at the minute. You know, I'm also playing Monster Hunter. I also play NGS, so and both those have got big events on at the minute as well. So that is not helping.
Yeah.
So for me, I wasn't too disappointed with the headline. To be honest, it was kind of what I expected, because I imagine the June one's going to be a bigger update anyway.
Yeah, I was just a little bit disappointed that they haven't teased June content much.
Yeah.
They did obviously mention that the weapon level cap is gonna increase, and we're gonna get the 8th augment, which we already kind of expected. So it's not really news.
I think we all knew.
Yeah, but it's nice to have that confirmed.
I think is June when we get Malignant Vial.
Yeah. So we also know about that, but the big question is what's the field update for June? Because the roadmap is very vague about it.
Yeah.
And this headline did not help at all.
I think the roadmap is quite often extremely vague. I think they only really fill it in when they get very near the date.
Yeah.
It's really hard to speculate. I mean, we know that we're probably getting some kind of version of, is it VL Hunar from PSO2 at some point?
Yeah,
Maybe
that's August onwards.
Okay.
Yeah, but
so we know that's coming.
That's like the thing with the roadmap, because I don't know why they highlight limited time quests so much on the roadmap.
Yeah.
Because like if you remove those, so during June to July, 2 months, we have the field update, Malignant Vial, new enemies, whatever that means.
Malignant Vial.
Yeah, but that would be sad, man.
Yeah, here's a new enemy. We've already mentioned it once.
SEGA collab and a sci-fi toy collab, which is probably going to be the Robot Girls collab, whatever it's called. SEGA title collab. It's probably gonna be Sonic.
It's Sonic's birthday in June, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
happy birthday, Sonic.
Preemptive birthday. But yeah, like new enemies and field update is all we have to go on, and we don't have the PSO2 30th anniversary in July, which is strange because it kind of implies that this month is so packed with content that we have to move the anniversary back. But the roadmap itself is only telling us field update and new enemies, and none of this sounds like enough content to push the anniversary back. So I don't know.
I think that since we were discussing it a bit earlier, I suppose that if you are wanting to take a break from NGS, maybe May is the time to do it.
Yeah,
because it does seem like a lighter month for sure. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing as getting a lighter month, because I'm expecting that June will probably be a bit better than this. And we do have the festival ongoing at the minute as well, which does help somewhat. But I could understand why people might be disappointed with the roadmap.
Yeah. I also, like, in February, they tried to make that month look meatier than it was. Like, oh, we have Urgent Quest, Darkfall's Vial Suppression. And then in the combat section, addition of Darkfall's Vial. Like, that's the same thing twice. Or like limited time quest times 3, relay quest times 7. That's again the same thing. Just say limited time quest times 10.
Yeah, and I suppose again the issue is the limited time quests, so you're only going to have them for a little while. So
yeah,
I don't mind them being on the roadmap, but I do kind of feel that they're on there to kind of pad the roadmap out a bit more to make it look fuller than it is.
They definitely feel like it, and I personally do think it's a little bit silly to include them on the roadmap, because realistically limited time quests are just featured quests from PSO2. Yeah. It's just like the flavor of the day / flavor of the month week type content.
Yeah.
And relying that as like filler content on your roadmap is a little bit silly. I would rather have like more detailed info on the roadmap. Like free SG scratch ticket update. That was on the roadmap under campaigns.
So that just doesn't need to be on there.
Yeah. New scratch ticket campaign during February. That was the Big Bang scratch. This is like, wow. We're really padding the roadmap right now.
I kind of feel with the way that the roadmap is at the moment, there's almost no point having it. It gives us a few ideas of what we're getting, but honestly, it's so vague at the minute that it may as well not be that.
Like, the most valuable information we got is that we're getting a new action system, and the story update is somewhere during August.
Yeah.
But that's like, we got this roadmap in December, and we still don't know anything. So yeah, I'm not super hot about the roadmap. I think the roadmap system worked way better during Chapter 6, because we are getting story updates every 2 months. I think that worked better. And then also, like, all the character silhouettes, they made me actually look forward to whatever is coming. So I don't know. Normally when there's like content drought, it's because the devs are cooking something behind the scenes. I just wish I knew what they're cooking.
You can tell us, Sega.
Yeah.
I won't tell anyone, honest. Hopefully they're just working on things, but it's just it's a little frustrating when you look at the roadmap and there's not a whole lot on it.
Yeah, I think I think it was Yoshi P from Final Fantasy 14 who said that running an MMO is like running a country. So it's important that your citizens have something to look forward to, or else they'll leave the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now it's like we're waiting. Or you could just play something else right now, which I've been doing.
Like we
as
said.
well. Yeah,
The theme of this episode, isn't it?
yeah. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon games recently on the Switch.
Cool.
Because the Switch 2 is coming out, so I'm like, maybe I should catch up on these Switch games before the Switch 2 comes out.
I've just been deep in Monster Hunter. Although I haven't played it much the last few weeks. Maybe during May I'll check out some Monster Hunter stuff.
Yeah. I'm still burnt out from Monster Hunter. Because I was like playing it a lot during 3 Ultimate and 4 Ultimate.
Okay.
But during 4 Ultimate, I remember I was farming, I think it was like Rathalos scales, because I really wanted to build the Rathalos high rank gear, and it just wouldn't drop at all. I got really frustrated, so I just quit the game entirely.
That's just like me and PSO.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some questions answered during the headline. Some of them were pretty good, some of them were a little bit disappointing. So we know the balance adjustments are gonna happen for preset skills, which is good, because Abundek was starting to get a little bit too overpowering.
Yeah, for sure.
They're gonna buff Fixa Attack, Fixa Termina, Fixa Fatale, Fixa Blaster, and Fixa Wix. So pretty much all the conditional fixes, except Attack, that's unconditional. But I imagine Attack won't be stronger than Abundek. They'll probably buff it to 10%, so it doesn't lag that much behind.
Yeah, there's no point Attack being as strong as a Bandak, because then no one will use a Bandak.
Yeah. They're also buffing Fixa Guard, which is gonna be interesting. I don't think anyone who's min-maxing is ever gonna use that, but people who need a little bit more beef will probably appreciate the buff.
I mean, it's not terrible on the round. If you build in a build that you're going to use seriously, you don't really use Fixa Guard.
Yeah.
I think if I've got it on any of my characters, it's probably accidental.
Yeah. But at the same time, I would rather have a player who uses Guard and doesn't die than a player who doesn't use Guard but then constantly dies, especially in high difficulty suppressions. I think I would rather have someone who can survive and keep up than someone who tryhards, is what I'm getting at.
I think it's good that they're buffing some of the fixes though, because some of them really aren't worth using at the minute.
Yeah, especially like Fatale, because the potency floor is getting to a point where Fatale is lagging behind. So I'm glad they're buffing it a little bit. Yeah, we'll have to see how the values are gonna be. We're also gonna have to see how the 8th augment is gonna affect things. Because that'll be I think, the final big power creep that we're gonna have.
I'm assuming so, yeah.
Yeah, and I also wouldn't mind if they just stopped releasing weapon level caps, because back in the day, like when version 2 launched, I made a video where I'm like, oh, the limit break system makes all these weapons viable again. But it's like, it only really lasts for 2 months until they release the next weapon and everything gets power creeped. So I kind of wish they would just abandon the system and make enhancing weapons a little bit more fun, because right now it's just menuing for like 5 minutes until you get to plus 100, and that's super boring.
Yeah, I really don't like the enhancement system in the game at the minute. I think it needs massively overhauling, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare to do it, particularly if you're doing a weapon and 3 armors. Grinding them up, even if you're grinding from like 60 to 90, it takes forever.
Yeah. Especially if you're a new player who doesn't have the 100% great success boosters, or if there is no campaign for the gear right now. It's just like such a chore. And I feel like that's also like disincentivizing people from playing around with different weapons, because like I could make a 12 and a Legendios and a Acrocelio, but that would require me to do 3 different weapons.
Yeah.
And I could also just stick to Acrocelio and be done with it. So that's a little bit of a bummer. So yeah, I kind of hope they will improve weapon enhancing a little bit. And I also feel like the whole limit break system isn't working as well as they hoped it would work. In my opinion, it would have worked better if it was like an optional system that you opt into to make older gear more viable, instead of something that everything has to interact with.
It just feels like there's not much point to it at the minute.
Yeah.
You get a weapon, you limit break it for the sole purpose of just being able to grind it.
Yeah, like who's gonna use a Prim weapon right now? limit broken to 100. Like I guess you could do it, but I'd rather you use the different weapon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a little bit of a shame, because some weapons have really good potentials that are just stuck on older weapons, and you just...
Yeah.
It is what it is, I guess.
Hopefully it's something that can rebalance a bit better in future, but...
Yeah. I know some people have been hoping that we get, like, new type weapons. Like, PSO2 also had, at some point, abandoned the old type weapons.
Yeah.
Which... were very similar to how you enhanced weapons in PSU, I think. Just without the punishment. And
without weapons blowing up.
Yeah. And the new type weapons is how weapons work right now.
Yeah.
Except that in PSO2, we stopped at plus 35. We didn't go to plus 100, which made it a little bit less of a chore to grind.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of hope maybe they have something like new type weapons in the pipeline that are a little bit more user friendly to grind.
Hopefully.
But at the same time, I don't think that's gonna happen, because in PSO2 that happened out of necessity, because old type was just so punishing to grind. Despite weapons not blowing up.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. And then we had some questions about the chat. And the first part of it was very good. They're looking to implement the chat for the salon.
Yeah.
It's good change, because we ARKS live in the salon.
We do.
But the second question was a little bit disappointing, where they're unable to like log chat messages while playing all ship, and if you wanna log messages, just use group chat. I think that's a little bit silly, because like Alliance chat isn't a group chat, and they already answered the question that they are unable to rewire things to make it work like a group chat. So I kind of wish they would allow us to, like, maybe move everyone into a group chat, because doing it manually... That would make
things easier.
Yeah, because doing things manually is a little bit of a nightmare. You can only invite people to a group chat that are on your friends list. So, as an Alliance officer or manager, I would have to like invite every single member to my friends list, and then invite them to the group chat, and then make sure everybody knows to use the group chat instead of the alliance chat, which most people would assume to use the alliance chat. So,
then that also then basically invalidates the alliance chat's purpose.
yeah, like if you can't change the alliance chat because it's PSO2 code or something, then maybe it's time to make a new system that's for New Genesis specifically.
Yeah.
Like maybe make the alliance chat like PSO2 only, and then for New Genesis make a new system.
Yeah, it would potentially be a solution to it. I feel that the answer that they gave in the headline was a bit of a cop-out, honestly.
Yeah. Another question was about mouth movement while chatting in Say Chat, which that was definitely a cop-out answer, because I don't think making a toggle for your character to move their mouth while you're chatting is that big of an ask. I know WoW does it. I know Final Fantasy XIV does it. I think SWTOR does it too.
Okay.
And I don't think people will type /face9 hello every time they have to chat with people. Just to make their mouth move.
I don't know if they just misunderstood the question, or the answer they gave was just like, no one is going to put in a command every time they want to speak.
Yeah, like the answer specifically was like the ability to automatically mouth words to match chat text would be difficult. But like, we don't want lip sync. We just want the standard animation of moving your mouth while you send chat messages. And like, I don't think that's a big ask.
I got the impression it was basically, this isn't really that important. We don't really want to work on it, so we'll just move on.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate. I think people who play for immersion, all 5 people, would really appreciate if that was a feature. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Would it be great if the Rappy cushion was also available as a bird part? We know one person who was excited for this, and I think that person was also the person who asked that question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we exposed them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those questions where it feels like this really didn't need to be highlighted in the headline.
Yeah, so why is this a question?
Like, I feel this segment would be best for questions that need to be explained a little bit thoroughly, instead of a question that you can just answer with yes or no.
I would rather them just have one question that they spend a bit of time on.
Yeah.
Rather than having a few questions where they kind of just gloss over them.
Yeah. So, yeah, we will get the build part.
Brilliant.
Yeah!
Can't wait for that. Put that on the roadmap.
Yes. Well, that will be more exciting than Limited Time Quest times 7.
Yeah.
They also showed the new face, the male animatica face, which for some reason was highlighted by 2 Type 2 characters.
Yeah, it was very weird that they showed the Type 2 characters in the trailer, because it confused me, because I was thinking, well, are we getting a new face for Type 2 as well? Or I really don't know what they were trying to do with that.
Maybe they're getting confused what Type 1 even means at this point.
What is a Type 1? Everyone just plays Type 2 anyway.
They also talked in the headline about the SEGA camp music, which is a little bit interesting, that it was designed with like Glenn in mind.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it that much, honestly. But now, in retrospect, thinking about it, it does kind of make sense, because the Ratem and Stia city theme, it changes according to your progress in the story. So
yeah,
I guess it makes sense that it's based around the main leaders of those regions.
I actually really like that segment that they actually went into a bit of detail about how the music was made and what it represents. I hope they keep doing that going forward.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like New Genesis music by some people is undervalued a little bit.
Yeah.
It's still Hidetaka Kobayashi doing the music. He's still here since PSO. But I feel like some people have such a need to crap on New Genesis that they even crap on Kobayashi-san, which I don't know, man. I feel like he's carrying it with the music.
I think for me, obviously, because I've played most of the franchise now, I think there are some songs I really love in NGS. I do feel it's got maybe a slightly weaker soundtrack than some of the other games, but that's like as a whole. There are still some really defining songs in NGS that I really like.
Yeah. And same with like PSO2. Like there's some songs that I really hate.
Yeah.
Like there's this one song that they used for, I don't know, Danger, and it's like just dum dum dum, and it's like you heard yeah, and you heard it like 20 times in 20 different games. It's like, wow, this is the best you could do. But then you have like Dragon X combat music, and it's like, holy shit, this slaps. How do you feel about the headline wave format with Yui as a host?
I much prefer it to the old headline. I think it actually has a personality now.
Yeah, same. Because that was my big problem with headline wave. I'm used to PSO2 stations, which were much more casual, where they hired like comedians to be hosts, and they were just goofing around and shit. It took 2 hours to get through the thing, but it was fun 2 hours. And I mean, Hero is fine. He doesn't strike me as someone who like games a lot, but he's chill, he's cool. But like the way he presents the headlines is like just so sterile. Yeah. And I complained about it before. It's why I did the bottom line video series for a couple of headlines. Because I just felt like there's just so little to latch onto from like entertainment value.
I get that it was. I guess the idea was it was kind of themed around like a news broadcast, especially with the whole like it's 9 p.m. at the start.
Yeah.
But it was very, very lacking in any kind of emotion at all.
Yeah, and it probably didn't help that the game like had little, which people would consider a soul. And then you watch the headline and it's literally soulless news broadcast. Yeah. So I hope that moving forward this will improve a little bit, because Yui is definitely putting in the effort. I love how she starts the headline wave just by yapping. Like, I was building Wildlands recently. Crazy weapon.
It just makes it feel a bit more personal, doesn't it? It makes it feel like she actually plays the game.
Yeah. And
even if she doesn't, I don't know if she actually does, but she gives the impression she does.
She does. And Hero also played the game. There was an interview like 2 months after New Genesis came out where he was saying like he played for 500 hours, both New Genesis and PSO2 combined, but it wasn't private. So I guess he played in the office. But Yui also plays the game. After the first headline she did, she had a live stream with one of the actors in... I think they were doing motion capture or something. But yeah, Yui was playing Mask on level 50, like around level 50. But like the guest person was playing it on level 100 as a ranger. And she actually finished first, which was very funny because afterwards she was just walking back and forth like a predator. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, I mean, the devs obviously play their own game, otherwise it'll be a lot more unbalanced. Which you could accuse the devs of not playing the game more back during PS2, I feel like, because there were balancing choices in PS2.
Definitely.
Yeah, there were some choices of all time. I mentioned it in
the
yeah, I mentioned it in the iceberg video, but there is this one skill for Talus that I think in the current version of the game it boosts technique damage by 20% when the Talus is deployed. When Dengeki PlayStation teased this skill, they used the description implying it will be 50%. So that was nerfed before it even came out. They weren't great at balancing the game back in the day, but yeah, nowadays I think they're pretty good at balancing. I know some people will complain about balancing because sometimes it can be frustrating, but trust me, no matter how broken New Genesis is, it's scratching the surface of how unbalanced PS2 was during certain time periods. Like, extra hard Mother on release, Summoner Gunner was just one-shotting that, and I don't think that was intended.
Yeah, Summoner Gunner was an absolute menace.
Yeah, it's the reason why we had the damage cap at 1 million implemented. Yeah. Because Marin was just so hard to balance. And even with the damage cap, you can watch like videos, like meme clears of Sodam on depth 100, where the person just has 25 Marins and he just jumps into the lava, which normally one-shots you, and he charges up his Marins, throws them, switches to the next, throws that, switches to the next, throws that, switches to the next, and then once all 6 are dead, he swaps the individual Marins in the menu and then keeps throwing them, and he clears depth 100 Sodam in like 5 minutes on Summoner. And the quest is meant to be like 15 minutes long. Yeah, PS2 is very balanced.
Very, very.
Very balanced. But yeah,
I think NGS is pretty good for balance overall. I think there's a couple of little issues, but for the most part, it's fine.
Yeah. Like, I know some people are disappointed with Bow for Braver, but then, as someone who plays Tector and Force, I wish Talus got at least half of the improvements that Bow got in the Braver expansion, because I feel like Talus got almost nothing. It was updated to have the same potencies as before the buff to Wand and Rod, and it had one issue fixed with the weapon action, but other than that, it's the same weapon, basically. Like, every other weapon had a lot of improvements, like it's way easier to build Revoke on Wand after the expansion.
Okay.
Same with Rod, it's way easier to build the elemental gimmicks because you can hold 2 elemental bullets now, and it's also easier to like parry on Force now because Rod Impact has parry frames. But like, Talus got almost nothing. It's the same weapon as before. And they didn't even improve the Tricky Capacitor damage, they didn't make Tricky Capacitor easier to build. It really feels like they're banking on the 4th Tech Arts customization to improve Talus significantly, and I'm not sure it'll be able to do that.
I mean, I'll be honest, I virtually never use Talus when I play Force or Tector.
I use it when I need an AoE PB and when I need hit scan.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm not using it much at all. And I wouldn't be able to tell you what they could do with Spread Shot to make it like really important outside of being an AoE attack.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Theoretically, if they make Tech House customizations that make Spread Shot important for single target, they could also, by proxy, affect Tricky Capacitor, which would add some depth to Talus, but who knows when that will be. Because it's not on the roadmap either.
Yeah, version 3.
Yes. Version 3 card revolution. Now for community questions. So we got a couple of them, which I'm very glad. I was kind of worried we wouldn't get any of them, but we got a couple.
Thank you to everyone who sent a question in.
Yeah, and if you want your questions to be featured, make sure to use the hashtag ARKSLounge on either X or Blue Sky. But yeah, let's go ahead. The first question is, I would like a topic regarding people's requests about new PAs, honestly. It seems that many newer or older players who quit has been ranting about the no newer PA. I personally love it as a topic, despite knowing they've been carefully adding skills to the classes instead. So I'll let you go ahead first, because I have a very interesting answer for this.
It's going to be really funny if we have completely different answers to this, but yeah, so for me, I think NGS obviously simplified Photon Arts from PSO2 Classic. I kind of have mixed opinions about it, honestly. I think that while we do have fewer Photon Arts to choose from now, I think that the way that NGS handles them is quite interesting, in that you can basically alter the Photon Arts depending on what you're doing. So, you know, some weapons will have it where if you're moving, the Photon Art will act differently. So there's a bit more variance in the Photon Art, I find, in NGS in that regard. I also think that in PSO2 Classic, as we touched on a bit earlier, there was a huge amount of Photon Arts and techniques, and honestly some of them were just not worth using. And there were certain ones that you kind of felt like you had to use over everything else. So I feel NGS has kind of solved that problem a little bit by cutting down on the Photon Arts, but I wouldn't be against them adding maybe 1 or 2 new Photon Arts to each weapon, just to, you know, keep things a bit fresh.
Yeah. So I personally believe that we can add more Photon Arts, but first we need to improve the weapon palette system, because right now it only supports 4 Photon Arts.
Yeah.
And especially if you're like multi-weaponing, then it's super difficult to like make all of these buttons appear on your palette elegantly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like I use a controller with like extra buttons that mirrors one of my stick clicks, and that stick click is mapped to an universal weapon action button, so I don't have my weapon action on my weapon palette, which allows me to add a 5th Photon Art on the weapon palette. But if I didn't have that, I practically wouldn't have multi-weapons on my weapons at all.
Yeah, I do not have that.
Yeah. And if they improve the weapon palette system, then by all means add more Photon Arts. But the devs actually answered this question already, and I don't think many content creators covered this interview. It was 2 months after New Genesis came out, and the translation might be a little bit spotty, but I used DeepL instead of Google Translate, so it should be a little bit more accurate. So the interviewer asks, the number of Photon Arts and techniques is smaller than it was right after the service launch of PSO2. What is the reason for this? And then Hero answers, in PSO2 normal attacks were practically just a way to recover PP, and some Photon Arts were not very effective. We also intentionally narrowed down the number of them because they could not fit in the palette. The development team believes that the number of options has not been reduced because there are actions that are opened up by learning skills, actions that can change with additional inputs, etc., plus actions for different weapons through multi-weaponry. So it's basically what we were talking about. Like, you don't need to implement more Photon Arts if you let us use the buttons that we already have in different ways. Like, for example, I didn't know how much I wanted want skip beat until we got want skip beat, because it allows us to press normal attack after a technique, and it does a whole different attack that wasn't available before.
Yeah.
And I think doing it that way is way better than just implementing photon arts outright. Because, like, yeah, you could add a skip beat photon art that's always available, but then it would require its own button on the weapon palette, and Tector is already having palette issues as it stands.
I think there are some classes that you could maybe get away with using subpalette for, because there's some classes that seem to barely use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for classes like Tector, maybe not.
Yeah. I do think Force especially could probably get more techniques. At the very least, like, simple compound techniques, I think would fit pretty nicely on Force. But yeah, this was answered back when we only had 3 photon arts per weapon, and they obviously added the 4th photon art later. But we also got a bunch of skills like one skip beat that, or like rod attack impact, that just make use of buttons you already have in different ways. Like, for example, Volcraptor on Partisan. Like, that used to be a photon art in PSO2. Now it's a weapon action. Same with Gunner. I think it's pressing weapon action without moving your movement stick that does this shoulder tackle animation. That used to be a photon art back in PS2. Now it's a weapon action. So I think you can expand classes without adding more photon arts. But there's obviously a limit to that. And I don't know if we're reaching that limit or not, but it could certainly explain why people in recent years are more vocal about photon arts. But yeah, I personally wouldn't want more photon arts unless they improved the weapon palette system.
Yeah, I think the weapon palette is definitely a limiting factor at the minute.
Yeah.
I think if they can fix that, then I think photon arts could work.
Which, I mean, if they're planning on making NT weapons, then they would obviously be mirroring the Episode 4 update, which also gave us the 3 button type input, which global players kind of missed out on the glory of playing with 2 button type.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that was super fun. I loved having weapon palettes where it's just 3 of the same photon art because I wanted to spam them. It was peak gameplay. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Okay, so congratulations on starting your own podcast. I've been working on a big project in personal space, but don't quite understand how to manage multiple teleporters. Do you have any tips? So I believe you're better to answer this question, because I have not fiddled around with teleporters much.
So I have used them a little bit in creative space. I did want to check this beforehand, but you have to take my word for it. Basically, in creative space, if you go into, I think you have to be in edit mode, and if you interact with one of your teleporters, there's a load of options you can choose. And there is these things called, I believe they're called connect IDs. I think what you want to do is basically link it so that the 2 teleporters that you want to link together have, I believe they need to have the same connect ID as each other. I could be wrong on that, but I think they need the same connect ID, and then they will link together. How it works for going beyond that with multiple teleporters, I've always been under the impression that you need to have them in pairs, because I think it would be difficult to use them if you're teleporting through one portal into a second one, and then having a second one port you into a third. So I tend to use them in pairs personally. Whether there is another way to do it, I'm not sure, but I typically use the Connect ID system just to pair up my teleporters.
Yeah, makes sense. Honestly, regarding the Connect ID system, I thought it would be like way easier for me to digest it, because I played a lot of RPG Maker, so doing stuff like event IDs like tagging them together. Like that was very easy for me on RPG Maker, but when I look at the New Genesis menu, it's a little bit overwhelming. I think they could.
It's not the easiest thing.
I think they could probably streamline that menu a little bit more.
I mean, especially for things like teleporters, because if you've got one teleporter, surely you're going to have a second one that it points to.
Yeah.
So you would think they would make the whole purpose of that easy to do. But
Yeah. They could also like implement maybe a menu where you can see all your IDs and what they connect to. Like have an overview of it, just so you can have an easier time keeping track of it.
yeah. I think there's still room for improvement in creative space, but I do really enjoy it though.
Yeah, they could for example implement an undo button.
That would be nice.
Yeah. They mentioned 2 years ago that they couldn't manage to do an undo button. And we're still waiting for it. So, yeah. I do wonder what's up with that. Maybe they did like all the creative space updates leading up to the version 2 launch, and then they're just trickled them down, and now they're just cooking for like creative space version 2. I don't know.
Yeah, I would just say though, just check your Connect IDs on your teleporters and just try and get them to link. If I remember correctly, I think when you look at the menu, I think there is an option that actually says teleport, and there should be a Connect ID next to that. So just make sure that they link to each other. And thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I hope we could answer it in an adequate way. Okay, another question is also creative space themes. Sometimes I wonder, do the majority of players explore player creative spaces, or do they just take the GP tree and leave? Nothing against them, of course, just a curious question from someone who likes to build creative spaces. They also attached these screenshots of their creative space, which is absolutely gorgeous, by the way.
It really is. I was really impressed with the screenshots, so well done on that.
Yeah. So regarding that, a year ago during the 3rd anniversary, there was an interview where they talked a little bit about how creative spaces were, how many players play creative spaces. They don't answer this question entirely, but they did mention that about 20% of all players edit creative spaces, and about 50% of players visit creative spaces. Now, how many of those are actually exploring creative spaces and how many of those are just going there for the tree and leaving, I don't know. I know when I'm bored, I'm visiting other people's creative spaces and exploring them, but when I just want to do my dailies, I just grab the tree and leave. So, how about you?
I think for me, I think it kind of depends entirely on what kind of player you are. There are going to be a subsect of players in NGS who are purely there to go and grind stuff and, kill whatever the latest UQ boss is. That kind of player might not be interested in the creative space. There will obviously be some that are as well, but I think there's always going to be some players that are there entirely for the combat side of the game or the fashion side of the game. But there are also a big group of players who the creative space might be the main thing they do in NGS, and for those, I think they're much more likely to go and visit other people's creative spaces.
Yeah.
I think for me, I do visit people's now and again. Honestly, for me, I think most of the time I go, it is mainly to get the GP tree, but that's mainly just because I don't have the imagination to make a great creative space. I am trying.
Yeah. For me, it's like, I wish I just had more free time to do it.
Yeah. It just takes so long to make a good one.
Yeah, especially if you want to make it look good as well. It can take a long time. Especially if you're moving some parts by 1 pixel at a time. But then for some reason sometimes you get this half pixel and everything is misaligned. So that can be a little bit frustrating. But yeah.
You could also do what I did and I made a huge jet in creative space. I was really happy with it. And then I wanted to change my background for the creative space. So I thought, right, I'll make the jet into a design and then I can move it. but I made the jet too big for a design, so I can't make it a design, which means now my creative space is stuck in the Alio one because I don't want to disassemble the jet.
Oh no. Yeah, this is something I wish they would also improve, like being able to switch the design without necessarily abandoning what you've built.
Yeah. I kind of get why, because I suppose the terrain is a bit different in each of the creative spaces.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to not have to rebuild everything.
Or at the very least, maybe they could allow us to like save what we've built, and then when we swap back to the, for example, Alio background, then we can load what we built before. But I believe that that's kind of stuff would have to be stored locally, because I can't believe their servers would be very happy about all the designs people would just save and never use.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, though. And again, awesome creative space.
Yeah, I wish I was as good in creative space as that.
Same. My feng shui is not as good when it comes to building. Okay, the final question. Do you miss formidable starless Halvaldi Vera, or on the floating island in Rotem being relevant? I do. Same for similar kill veterans spawn boss gimmicks like redone Rayord Gorge, the King Rappies in Quaris, and etc. Stuff like that is fun to me. So I enjoy it, but it has so little variety that it gets boring really quickly. And I think that's like the main problem with it.
Okay.
I think they started to realize it around the Rayod Gorge version 2, because that's when they... Because in Roof Maquad, they only had Dread enemies and Giga Recons, which isn't much to do. Half the time you'd just be waiting for them to spawn, and then the boss itself would spawn irregularly. And in Rayod Gorge it was a little bit more packed with stuff to do. And you also had like the variety of the boss. Sometimes it's Arms Quaris, sometimes it's Frostal. I think they could have probably added more bosses into that rotation. And then when doing Mediola, they obviously added the Angela to the boss spawn pool, but it's still just 2 bosses while you're doing trials in the combat portion of that thingy. But you can tell they're slowly trying to improve on the format, and I think whatever they're planning for the new field, whenever that's coming, they'll probably have a boss arena, and it'll probably be better than what we had in Stia, because they're always improving with this stuff. They just need to figure out how to make people play it for longer than 1 week.
I think that's the issue, isn't it? Is that a lot of this content does get replaced quite quickly. So even with things like Halvaldi Vera, I think we did it for, what was it, a couple of weeks maybe, and then it kind of became irrelevant again.
I think the main issue is that there just were no rewards to keep you investing it. Like, yeah, there was Dreadkeeper, which was nice, but we need more than that. Like, why can't Dread Scales have like cosmetics in the exchange shop? Why can't there be materials that we want to have, like X cubes or alpha reactors? Like, I think that would add a lot more longevity to the content than just having an exchange shop dedicated entirely to a weapon series that's not great and got replaced really quickly. And
I think I think when it first got added, obviously I think the main reason people were doing it was for the dread scales, but also for the melee weapons, because I think they were still quite new at that point. I can't remember if they got added with that update or if it was just before.
They got added with that update, yeah.
Okay. So I guess there was a reason to do it initially, but once those couple of weeks had passed, there was just no reason to do it anymore.
Yeah.
I would like them to do something similar again though, because for me, coming from like a PSO background, that is probably the closest I've felt to actually kind of farming for a rare drop.
Yeah.
And there's something in me that is just, I'm just drawn to hunting rares. So I think because I'm an old PSO player, that kind of appealed to me a bit. But I think it does need work.
Yeah, I also think that there's a little bit an issue that you don't really have a reason to go into that sector unless you want to kill Havaldi Vera.
Yeah, it's a lot of empty space.
Yeah, and I think if they like designed, if they maybe move stellar fragments to this area so that people go there for the fragments and then, oh, somebody is farming dread, so I might as well join them. Like,
yeah.
That could work. I imagine that could work at least. And then, oh, we killed the dread enemy. Havaldi's dropped, so we might as well fight him. Like, I think the devs need to figure out how to do a proper gameplay loop with exploration content. Yeah. Because I think we all can agree that exploration content is where they drop the ball the most. And I remember when this first came out, I was like very happy with how they did it, because I like the idea of Rayout Gorge. It's just that building augments just to protect me from the cold was very unattractive.
Yeah, so.
And I still need to do the title tasks for Frostal Sword. I think I'm missing like 20 kills on that front. And then they also had like plans for Stia that I believe they abandoned because of the backlash over Blizzardium.
Oh, okay.
Because prior to the changes to Mediola, they had a system where if you killed all the recon gigantics in that area, it would actually spawn the dog dolls, I forget his name, as a Gigantix. And
it's like Valdir or something like that, is it?
Yeah, something like
that. Yeah.
And
I know which one you mean.
You have a title task to kill him, which means it was planned as a boss, but prior to the version 2 overhaul, there wasn't really any point to do it. It was cool that it was there, but
yeah,
you could tell that they had other plans with it that they just didn't realize. And Havaldi Vera was the first time where I felt like, okay, they're slowly finding the secret sauce to make this work. But yeah, it needs, obviously, more work to actually work. And then in the Rayout Gorge version 2, they improved that by adding way more stuff into it. They added recons. They didn't update the levels of the lower mobs, which was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
But they added the torches, which helped a little bit with farming. And
the only thing I will torches is kind of one of the cool things for me about Rayjord was that it was like the only hazardous place in the game. I didn't like that you had to have affixes in your armor to nullify the cold, but it was kind of cool that it was this like new area that had like an extra thing going for it.
Yeah.
And when they added the torches to it, it just made it completely irrelevant because there was so many torches.
I believe if we had a more interesting food system, then it would be pretty neat if you could like maybe make a recipe that is just to resist the cold. Because I believe Monster Hunter has this, where depending on how you cook your food, you have different buffs.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you get specific buffs depending on what you plan on fighting. And I believe it could work in PSO2 if they fleshed it out a little bit more. It would require a little bit more than just one area for one specific buff.
Yeah.
And I believe the devs...
no reason to do it.
Yeah, and I believe the devs also realized this, which is why you don't have a specific recipe, you just eat in Quaris and get the heat resistance buff automatically. But, yeah, I don't know. It just feels like a not very well thought out mechanic that they probably tried to copy Monster Hunter a little bit. They just haven't figured out how to do it properly.
Yeah.
And now with Mediola, they actually have mobs that are updated in level, so there's a little bit more to do. You're not just waiting for dread enemies and recons to spawn. You can actually also just do trials, which previously the exploration sector trials were pretty nothing.
There was like no real reason to do them, honestly.
Yeah. And that's also like the main grievance I have with exploration content, is that they could have given trials like some currency with an exchange shop, and that would probably get people to play exploration content more.
Yeah.
But they didn't for some reason, and
I just feel that the exploration sectors at the minute, for the most part, are just, for the most part, wasted space. There just isn't really a whole lot going on in them.
Yeah, it's basically just for screenshotting, honestly. And I mean that's fine, but if they're gonna add more fields, I hope they apply what they learned from the sectors we had.
Yeah.
And make sure that the next field that they're gonna pull off is going to slap. Because I think those bosses, while they only lasted like 1 week before people stopped playing them, they showed that they are understanding how to do them better. So I'm very hopeful that whenever the next region drops, and it's not just like an instant region like Ninja City, that they will actually like figure out how to do this.
I kind of feel that, I don't know if you feel the same about this, but I kind of feel that since launch, NGS has been a very experimental game, where they've been kind of testing the waters with different things.
Yeah. One of my friends says that a lot of the game feels like fucking around and finding out.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it is a very different game to previous Phantasy Star titles, because I don't think they ever did an open world on that scale before.
Not really, no. I mean,
No.
I suppose the nearest thing, if you want to count it, is I suppose PSU had like the interlinked lobbies, but even that's not open world.
Yeah. And I think it's like they do need to get a lot of experience with this kind of stuff before they nailed it. But you could also say the same about PSO2, honestly, because I personally felt like they had an idea and it was just not working for a lot of the time with PSO2. And then starting like episode 4 and 5, they started to like really nail it, because that's when they also started to do a lot of Dark Falls urgent quests.
Yeah.
Like, episode 1 only had 1 Dark Falls, and it was 40 minutes long. Then episode 2 had a Dark Falls that was also 40 minutes long. And if you had the displeasure of not having a ranger in your party, then it was 60 minutes long. So that was fun. Then episode 3 had Magatsu and Profound Darkness and the mining base defense Dark Falls. So they started to realize that urgent quest is where it's at.
Yeah.
And then episode 4 is just one Dark Falls after another. Then episode 5 as well. Like, episode 5, I know people crap on it who were playing at the time, because justifiably, like, the first few months were just absolute dog water. But once we started getting all the Dark Falls, it was like really cool. Like, episode 5 Luthor is really fun, in my opinion. Then they added like the turret payload thingy with Apprentice, which is really cool. Like, it's a little bit slow, but at the same time, I really like the transition from the first part of the quest to the second part. And then Persona was also really cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like the Persona fight.
Yeah. So, yeah, it takes this this dev team a little bit to get the ball rolling, and I understand that while still experiencing the growing pains in real time, it pains some players a lot, but it's just one area where you just have to either play something else until they figure it out, or just hope for the best.
Like I said in one of my videos, I think that the way that NGS is now, it's kind of set in stone, the sort of the core mechanics of the game. And I think that if you're not enjoying the core mechanics, that's probably not going to change too much.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna do a massive overhaul patch where we're in space again in an ARKS ship lobby and we're going to different planets. Like, I don't think they're gonna do that. I know many people want this, but they would have to fundamentally design a new game, basically. Which I don't think is gonna happen.
Maybe that's PSO 3.
Or maybe that's PSO 2.
Yeah, PSO 2 version 2.
Yes. PSO 2 Lightning Returns. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that question as well.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I do miss these bosses, but I do feel like updating the older bosses will probably not do much. They just need to nail the next one.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just so many moving parts that they would have to do. That first impressions are important, and I don't think if you update like Havaldi Vera that people will be like, oh, let's farm that for a month straight. Like, I don't think that's gonna happen.
But people complain about it, honestly, because they just be like, well, you're just rehashing old content now.
Yeah, I mean that too, but the devs also know from experience, because Buster Quests were really bad at launch, and they were improving them over the course of episode 5, and by the time they stopped improving them, they were really fun, but nobody was playing them at this point, because everybody already had their first impression that they suck, so...
I think I'd stopped playing episode 5 by that point.
Yeah. Like, at some point they made it so that solo Buster Quests only spawned with 2 towers, so it was way more manageable to do them solo.
Okay.
And also, like, many quality of life improvements that just weren't at launch. But again, why would anyone go back to that when they already have such a sour impression of them to begin with? So yeah, whatever their plans are for the next fields, that's when they have to improve the content. And I also feel like, because exploration quests are clearly designed to be the NGS version of free field exploration, but free field exploration had a boss at the end.
Yeah.
And dungeons in PSO also had a boss at the end. Exploration sectors are the only content so far in NGS that feels like it's lacking an end goal. And I feel like if they made exploration content where, let's say you start in West Elio and you need to combat your way all the way through Halfya Lake and fight a super boss there, that would feel probably very PSO-like. And I think that's what people are missing right now out of New Genesis, to have the game feel like a PSO title.
So what we're saying is you could go play PSO as well.
Yeah. But because I don't think we're gonna go back to like fully randomized dungeons at this point.
No.
But PSO dungeons also weren't exactly randomized.
There's like a few set patterns that they tended to use, so...
Yeah, and I think if they like... Because like, I don't think they're gonna make a exploration sector that's not instanced. Because like, Lucille was instanced. Nameless City was instanced. And I believe that design works, but Nameless City doesn't have a boss, for example. Let's say if we're gonna have a instanced exploration sector, and it's a sector where you go from A to B, and you need to defeat a boss. So let's say you have 50 minutes to go from A to B. and on your way there you can find chests that give you random buffs. That could be fun. You could also find chests that are maybe a little bit harder to get to, but give you rewards. That could be fun. Like, there's a lot they could do to make pretty fun exploration content that's repeatable.
I feel they're experimenting a bit with that already. I know it's not an exploration zone, but obviously the new Lucille update, without having like the random buffs per room, that feels like a step towards that maybe.
Yeah. The only problem I have with the new Lucille is that it's too quick. It feels like rooms end way too quickly.
Yeah. I also just want to touch on this. I really don't like that if the room ends and you're jumping over somewhere, it just stops you in midair and you just fall.
Yeah. There were some fun memes made about that, but yeah, it's a little bit jarring. But yeah, that was the final question. Thanks for the submissions.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who sent questions in.
Yeah. Also,
again, if you want to send any for the next episode, use hashtag ARKS Lounge.
Yeah, also, you guys probably saw throughout the episode that we're showing a bunch of screenshots. If you want to submit your own screenshot, please use the same hashtag as well. We have so many great screenshot or fashionistas, I should say. So it's always a joy to scroll through Twitter or Blue Sky and see people's creations. I feel like PSO2 especially and New Genesis have such good creative outlets in terms of character customization and creative spaces.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's one of the main draws of the game, honestly.
Yeah, and it's really fun to see, because like I remember even in PSO2 I was so impressed when I saw a cast who transformed into a bike. It's always so much fun, and yeah, I kind of want to highlight that because this is like the game's biggest strength, honestly.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it is amazing what you can do in the creator, but seeing what other people can do as well. Every time I do something that I think is cool, I'll see something else on Twitter or Blue Sky that just blows it out of the water.
Yeah. I also like enjoy how customizable everything is, because like no other game would allow me to make a red-skinned character like I do. Like I would love to identify with my Final Fantasy 14 character a lot more, but that character creator is so restrictive. It basically only allows you like lore accurate choices, but like I'm like not interested in lore accurate choices. I just want a character I identify with, and the options it gives me is not good enough.
You just want to make a red succubus, that's all you're asking for.
Yes. Is this too much to ask? Can you give me some wing options, some tail options, some horn options, some sunburned skin options? But yeah, I know a lot of people who enjoy making original characters are having a lot of fun with the game, which I know some people who are just in here for the combat aren't really what's the word? Relating with. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's also like, I don't know. Some people take that compliment a little bit backhanded way by saying like, oh, it's just a glorified dress-up simulator. It's like, I mean, it's not entirely wrong, but obviously the game has more to offer than just that.
Oh yeah.
Like, one thing that I always loved about PSO2 and why I was drawn to it over other action MMOs is that the combat just feels like offline console game quality. Like, you don't really notice that there's any lag even when you play on Japanese servers, because, well, yeah, the damage calculation is done on the servers, but the hit detection is done locally. So even if the damage calculation happens a little bit late, it feels like you're playing an offline game, which I believe is very cool.
With the exception of when NGS first launched and there was that huge lag spikes.
Yeah, that yeah. Sometimes lag can be a little bit too much. That sure was a time period to play the game.
It was. Yeah, launch was very rough.
It's also unfortunate because I feel like many people's first impression was tainted by it.
Yeah, it really did the game no favors.
No.
But to anyone who might be watching who maybe hasn't checked the game out for a while, it is better now.
Yes, it's definitely better. Yeah. I also know some people are like not satisfied with content updates, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like some people were spoiled by how PS2 Global did content updates, because we basically skipped all the dry periods of PS2. To me, as someone who played since 2013, the content pace feels alright. I just wish they were better at communicating with the players what they're working on, what their design intentions are. And obviously they're improving that, because we used to not have the letter from the developer in the headlines. But it still feels like playing the silent telephone with the devs, because all of our questions have to go through them through a third party. And sometimes
there's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there?
Yeah, there's still this disconnect. Back during the PS2 station period, you had the developers on the live stream, and they would answer questions directly. And it's possible that those were cherry-picked as well, but I always got the impression that the answers we were getting were a little bit more useful. Like, for example, there would be questions like, oh, Armada Urgent Quest, which timed ability do I have to use this for?
Yeah.
And they don't answer it. Yeah, you just use ARKS fleet. And there you go. Like, that feels like a useful question.
Yeah.
Talking about Rappi Plush build parts. Not exactly.
It's important to some people, or one person in particular.
Yes. one creature. But yeah, that's all we had to cover for this podcast. Hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered quite a bit there. I think, you know, again, thank you to everyone who submitted questions or screenshots as well.
Yeah.
If your screenshot didn't make it in, we will try and feature some more next time as well, hopefully.
Yeah. And next time we'll also try to have a guest with us. So maybe there'll be more yapping going on, maybe not. I hope this episode was fun, and hopefully the next episode will be better, because like I said, this is the first time we're doing a podcast like that, so it's a little bit uncharted territory for both of us.
It is very much sort of work in progress, so
yeah,
if it's been a bit rough, it will improve.
We'll also appreciate any feedback you can submit to how we could improve this podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed doing this, and I'm definitely down for doing more of these. So if people want to see more, let us know.
Yeah. And we'll hear each other in the next ARKS Lounge. Thanks for watching.
See you guys. Thanks for watching.